Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The tiny town of Elmwood was far from the bustling chaos of metropolitan life. Nestled between rolling hills and dense woodlands, its charm lay in its simplicity, a modest population, quaint diner, and a single main street lined with vintage shops. Yet, beneath this serene veneer, shadows lurked. The tranquility of Elmwood would soon be shattered, plunging the community into a deep abyss of secrets and betrayal. The autumn air was crisp as the leaves turned golden, casting an amber hue across the landscape. It was on an ordinary October morning, one that had begun like any other, when the town's relatively mundane existence snapped violently into chaos. The local farmer, Henry Collins, was on his early morning rounds tending to the sprawling fields that defined his family's legacy for generations. His routine was interrupted by an unsettling sight: a rusted pickup truck, partially concealed in the overgrowth at the edge of the property. Curiosity piqued. Henry approached the vehicle, heart pounding in sync with the rapid pace of his fall. Something felt off. The truck was out of place, a foreign intrusion on the land. As he drew closer, dread seized him. The driver's side door hung ajar, and inside, a chilling scene awaited him: the crumpled body of a young woman, lifeless and pale, hidden beneath a layer of debris. This was no accident. Elmwood had been marked by violence before, but this death stoked the embers of fear that had long since settled into the town site. As news spread, whispers accompanied every face. Mistrust grew, and the question of who among them could commit such an atrocity began to hang heavily in the air. With a heavy heart and growing apprehension, Henry stepped back from the ghostly scene. Of this was the catalyst for an investigation that would uncover the truth buried beneath years of silence. The victim. As the sun lowered in the sky, casting long shadows across Elmwood, the townsfolk found themselves grappling with the reality of the tragedy that had unfolded. The life once coursing through the body of the young woman was now a puzzle, each piece crucial to understanding who she was and how she had met her untimely end. Her name was Clara Bennett, a vibrant 24-year-old with deep ties to the community. Born and raised in Elmwood, Clara was adored by many. She was known for her fierce independence and compassionate heart, often volunteering at the local animal shelter and organizing community events that brought neighbors together. But behind that bright smile and infectious laughter lay the burdens of a life that had not always been kind to her. Those closest to Clara recalled the challenges she faced. After her mother succumbed to illness when Clara was just a teenager, he had become a natural caretaker for her younger sibling, often giving up her own dreams to ensure their well-being. While she had aspirations of becoming a veterinarian, reality had nudged her onto a different path, paved with obligations and sacrifice. Despite her circumstances, Clara had never lost her spark. Friends described her as resilient, always seeking the silver lining in every storm cloud. But lately, there had been whispers she had begun to act differently, more withdrawn, secrets hidden within the corners of her smile. A strained relationship with her father, coupled with mounting pressure to care for her siblings, had begun to take its toll. Authorities began their investigation by speaking to those who knew her best, delving deep into her life beyond the facade everyone else had seen. It wasn't long before they uncovered a troubling recent history, marked by troubling encounters and an unsettling message left behind on her phone text, forwarded from an unknown number, hinting at more than just casual strife in her daily life. As the inquiry deepened, Clara's vibrant tapestry began to fray, revealing darker threads woven into her story. Each conversation unearthed more questions. And in a town where everyone thought they knew everyone else, the truth about Clara Bennett's life was proving to be far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. The crime scene. The golden light of the setting sun illuminated the crime scene as investigators arrived. Their faces, a mixture of determination and grim resolve. The pickup truck, now surrounded by police tape, was treated with the utmost caution as they began their meticulous examination. Evidence needed to be gathered, meticulously catalogued, every detail examined under the keen scrutiny of trained eyes. Detective Sarah Lin, a seasoned investigator with over a decade of experience, stepped onto the scene, her notes and camera ready. Her senses heightened as she took in her surroundings. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint odor of decay, a stark reminder of the reality they now faced. She approached the abandoned vehicle, her mind racing through the potential motivations behind this brutal act. It wasn't the first time she had encountered tragedy in her career, but the brutality of this situation echoed louder than most. As her team began to secure the perimeter, Detective Lin focused on the details. Clara Bennett lay at an odd angle, the remnants of her belongings scattered around her. A light jacket she had worn, discarded haphazardly on the car floor, hinted at a struggle. The clothing fray at the cuffs and stain was soil indicated, not only a confrontation, but perhaps a desperate escape attempt. The young woman's phone had been carelessly tossed aside, its screen cracked, but still functional. Lin's heart sank as she noted the inconsistencies. It was evident that Clara had not intended to come to a place like this. Why had she been here? Who had she been with? Forensics technicians began their work, meticulously taking samples of both physical evidence and potential fingerprints. Every forensic bag, filled with small traces of Clara's life, told a story. There were strands of hair on the floor mat, a crucial detail that might eventually lead to a suspect, and an unfamiliar tire print in the mud nearby. Something Detective Lin made a note to prioritize. As dusk descended, the urgency of the investigation loomed large. Not only did they need to uncover the psychological landscape behind Clara's death, but they also needed to assure the citizens of Elmwood that justice would prevail. The sun dipped lower, the shadows lengthening, echoing the darkness that had engulfed this once peaceful town. There were answers, buried deeper than the warm autumn leaves surrounding them, and it was up to Lin and her team to unearth the truth that lay beneath. The early investigation. With the sun setting behind the hills of Elmwood, a sense of unrest hung heavily in the air. Detective Sarah Lin rallied her team at the local police station, a modest brick building whose walls had witnessed decades of community history, both good and bad. The mood among the officers was somber as they prepared for the initial phase of their investigation into Clara Bennett's tragic death. Lin opened the meeting, laying out the facts gathered thus far. Clara was found in a vehicle off Collins' property, but we need to establish a timeline. When was she last seen? Who were her associates in the days leading up to her death? Each officer nodded, the intensity of the case igniting a fire within them. The first course of action involved interviewing friends and family, a task that none of them approached lightly. Clara's friends were shaken, their faces pale and haunted. Jenna, Clara's best friend, struggled to maintain composure as she relayed their last conversation. She seemed worried but didn't explain why. Just kept saying she needed to handle some things on her own. Long words echoed ominously, leaving Jenna searching for meaning within Clara's reluctance to confide. While his team conducted interviews, Lin began to analyze Clara's digital footprint. She learned about Clara's social media and any recent changes that might indicate distress. A late-night post captured Lin's attention. It depicted a gathering at the diner. A fun evening turned sour by a seemingly innocuous comment from an acquaintance, something about relationship, troubles and troublemakers approaching from outside the town. Detective Lin directed her attention toward tracking the origins of those troubling messages, leading her to Clara's phone records and calling habits. One particular number surfaced, consistently popping up in the days leading up to her death. It belonged to a newcomer in town, Daniel Miller, a man whose arrival had raised eyebrows within the community, largely due to the air of mystery surrounding it. With leads emerging from multiple avenues, the investigation transformed from a tragic incident into a complex web of connections and consequences. As each piece fell into place, it became increasingly clear that Clara's final days were shadowed by threads of fear, deception, and perhaps the very essence of the unsettled past that lay just beneath Elmwood's tranquil facade. The detective's instincts warned her that the truth behind Clara's death might be more deeply entangled in local history than anyone dared to admit. The dead ends. As the investigation progressed, the early excitement of potential breakthroughs dulled to a frustrating stream of dead ends. Detective Sarah Lin spent countless hours sifting through interviews, examining timelines, and analyzing digital data. Each day, it felt as though they were circling around Clara's life, yet she remained tantalizingly out of reach. The team canvassed the diner where Clara had last been seen, a charming establishment with a retro vibe. Regular patrons offered up stories Clara had been there, joking with friends, laughing over milkshakes. But Hammer Dove Heaper Cucumber Cool smiles turned to whispered speculation. More than one patron noted the presence of Daniel Miller that night. The newcomer whose penchant for lingering in the background. Yet, when approached, Daniel claimed ignorance, insisting he barely remembered Clara despite repeated sightings. The strains of a town, captivated by their own mythology, began to unravel. Sarah received numerous tips from townsfolk, each one a thread leading nowhere. Odd sightings of Clara, others supposed interactions with vague references, and updates on random vehicles parked near her home. Each lead was a piece of a puzzle that only seemed to grow less coherent with attention. The most disheartening moment came when they received a report of a potential suspect, a former partner of Clara's known for his jealous tendencies, only to have him provide an ironclad alibi, supported by multiple witnesses. With every path leading to a cul-de-sac, doubt crept into Lin's mind. Was the community more tightly knit than she had presumed? Or was something being deliberately concealed? As the days turned into a week, frustration morphed into a heavy cloud over the station. Each interview felt like a spiral into familiar territory that yielded nothing new. Conversations grew repetitive, and the air hung thick with unanswered questions that pressed against the soul of the investigation. Clara's death weighed heavily on everyone involved, not just as a tragic loss, but as a haunting reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of any town. Even the quaint streets of Elmwood, the chase for closure, battered detective instincts emerging as a battle against time, the community's patience and the silence hiding behind closed doors. When everything felt like a dead end, Detective Lin wondered if the truth about Clara Bennett was already buried, coaxed back into the shadows, where it would remain forever unfound. A break in the case. After what felt like an eternity of pursuing false leads, a breakthrough emerged when Detective Sarah Lin received an unexpected call one rainy afternoon. An anonymous tipster claimed they had pertinent information regarding the night Clara Bennett disappeared. The caller's voice was shaky, filled with urgency and apprehension, as they insisted that meeting in person would be the only way to convey the information safely. Lin met the tipster at a secluded park just outside Elmwood, tension crackling in the damp air. The figure, clad in a hooded jacket, emerged from the shadows, keeping their face obscure. They had been a close observer of Clara's world, they explained, but trembling fingers revealed a connection leading to the heart of the investigation. There was an argument, the tipster whispered, eyes darting around nervously. I saw it unfold between Clara and her meaning Daniel Miller. It was late, and I felt they were just talking. But then the informant hesitated, drawing a shaky breath. It got violent. I couldn't intervene. They were near the old train station, after closing hours. Lin felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins as the pieces started coming together. The old train station had been abandoned for years, hidden away from the town's prying eyes, a perfect place for secrets to be concealed. She pressed for more details. Did you see anything else? Did he hurt her? The tipster nodded, fear etched on their face. I didn't see everything clearly, but I heard shouting. Clara was scared, and then it went quiet. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't think. Their voice trailed off, regret staining their words. With renewed urgency, Lin returned to the station. The shadows of complacency lifted. The train station became the focal point for their search. That night, as the rain fell steadily, Lin gathered her team for a full-scale search. Equipped with flashlights and determination, they ventured into the decaying structure, aided by the information gleaned from the informant. Amidst the cracked walls and broken glass, the air heavy with memories, the discovery of a single earring, clinging to the floor beneath debris, sent waves of urgency through the group. It was Clara's a small piece of evidence that transcended the void of uncertainty. Lin knew then they were on the cusp of pulling back the veil, cloaking the events leading to Clara's death. Well, the hunt had reignited, and this time, the pieces were aligning, ready to unearth the dark truth that had eluded them for far too long. The suspect, with Clara Bennett's earring confirmed as evidence, landscape of the investigation shifted dramatically. Detective Sarah Lin, emboldened by the clear path ahead, tightened her focus on Daniel Miller. His role in Clara's life, now illuminated by the violent confrontation described by the tipster, painted him not just as an acquaintance but as a potential suspect. Lin wasted no time in arranging an interview with Day. He arrived at the station, originally appearing calm and collected. But Lin could sense an underlying tension. She led him into an interrogation room, the stark lighting casting shadows across his features. Daniel, she began, her voice steady but firm. We need to discuss your whereabouts the night Clara disappeared. His brow furrowed, but he maintained an air of indifference. I told you, I don't know anything about that. I barely even knew her, he replied, folding his arms defensively. Lin leaned forward, deliberately breaking the rhythm of the conversation. We know you argued with Clara near the old train station. Witnesses saw you, Daniel. Why did you lie about that? At the mention of the station, a flicker of discomfort flashed across his face. He fidgeted, fingers drumming against his forearms. I denied. I didn't involved in her drama, he replied, stuttering slightly. I was just trying to help her sort out personal issues. I'm not a bad guy. The detective felt the tension rising. She pressed him further, detailing the timeline of events leading up to Clara's death. Each question deliberately aimed to unravel his facade of innocence. So what did you argue about that night? What did you mean by helping her sort out personal issues? Daniel's bravado crumbled. His defensiveness morphed into a desperate attempt to redirect the conversation. Clara was into things she shouldn't have been. I was just trying to make sure she was safe, he insisted, voice escalating. But the cracks in his story deepened, and the urgency in his demeanor betrayed his unease. As she probed deeper, then could see the weight of her words sinking in, each confession spiraling away from the truth he wished to maintain. He was no longer merely a bystander. Suspicion poured over her investigation like rain, saturating every crevice of his narrative. When the interrogation wrapped, the air in the room was thick with tension. Yet Detective Lin understood the threads of truth were beginning to pull taut. Daniel's demeanor and nervous behavior only reinforced the gravity of their findings. The evidence was mounting, and it was becoming clearer that the shadows of resentment had haunted Clara's final moments. As the stakes escalated, it became evident that there was much more to unravel about Daniel Millera's story, entwined with desperation, vulnerability, and the darkness that too often consumed those lost in its depths. The trial, the sound of gavel strikes echoed through the packed courtroom as the trial against Daniel Miller commenced, electrifying the air with a palpable mix of tension and anticipation. The small town of Elmwood, known for its peaceful life, became a hub of public interest, drawing curious onlookers who wanted to witness the unfolding saga stemming from Clara Bennett's tragic death. Detective Sarah Lin sat quietly among the spectators, reflecting on the journey that had led them to this point. The loss of Clara had rocked the community to its core, and now, as the trial commenced, the weight of their shared grief transformed into a quest for justice. The prosecution, led by an assertive district attorney, wasted no time outlining its case, presenting the evidence that pinned Daniel as the prime suspect. A familiar narrative, recounted with the sharpness of Clara. Witnesses took the stand, each more emotionally charged than the last. Clara's friends spoke of her laughter, her nurturing spirit, and her recent turmoil of the menacing arguments that had thrown her life into chaos. The tipster, emboldened by hope for justice, revealed the confrontation they witnessed at the train station, breathing life into the timeline, leading to Clara's demise as the courtroom hung on every word. But it was the moment Daniel took the stand that truly shifted the atmosphere. Under the oppressive weight of scrutiny, he clung to his earlier claims of innocence, stammering through rehearsed arguments crafted by his attorney. The defense spun a narrative emphasizing Clara's struggles of mental health, suggesting she had fallen into a deeper abyss than anyone realized, attempting to shift blame and unearth chinks in her character. As Lin observed the interactions unfold, she felt a knot of frustration tightening within. Justice seemed like a fragile illusion. The defense's attempts to obscure Daniel's culpability underscored the distortions of truth that often surface in turbulent waters. In her heart, Lin believed the evidence was compelling, a mixture of concrete proof and the emotional weight of Clara's life, recounted by those who knew her best. Over the course of several days, she sat through expert testimonies and cross-examinations, trying to pierce through the facade that shrouded the real story. The verdict was delivered in a tense atmosphere, the anticipation weighing heavy in the air. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder. Relief coursed through the courtroom as tears filled the eyes of Clara's family and friends, a bittersweet moment of closure amid the sorrow. As the gavel struck for the final time, Detective Lin allowed herself a moment to breathe. They had brought the truth to light, yet the echoes of Clara's absence still lingered, forever altering the fabric of Elmwood. The case may have concluded within the confines of the courtroom, but the memory of Clara Bennett would remain etched in the hearts of all who had gathered, a solemn reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that could seep into every corner of even the brightest places. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, the town of Elmwood slowly began to exhale. Yet despite the verdict that had provided a semblance of justice for Clara Bennett, a palpable emptiness lingered in the air. News reports faded, but the shadows of the tragedy hung thick, suffusing the community with a mix of healing and grief. Detective Sarah Lin stood on the steps of the police station one dreary afternoon, the rain drizzling overhead as she reflected on the weight of her journey. While the drive for justice had propelled her forward, the toll had been immense, both emotionally and mentally. Walking the familiar streets, she was acutely aware of how the fabric of Elmwood had unraveled and become tethered together once more. But the lingering scars were undeniable. Clara's family had organized a small memorial service, seeking solace in the embrace of their extended family and friends. The event drew a crowd that overflowed from the quaint church, where candles were lit and memories shared. Each spoken word was steeped in the tenderness of loss, a journey through Clara's life, filled with laughter, compassion, and resilience. Attendees recounted her spirit in vivid detail, reminding all present of the light that had passed too soon. In the midst of the memorial, Lin found herself speaking to Clara's younger siblings, who, though hurt, possessed a surprising strength that echoed Clara's own legacy. "She was a guardian for us," the eldest sibling remarked with a mixture of sorrow and pride. "And we owe it to her to make sure we're okay." Their determination stirred something within Lin, a reaffirmation that even in darkness, light can forge resilience. Meanwhile, the investigation team remained in close-knit contact, bound by the pursuit of answers. They had faced the demons of the case together, overcoming self-doubt and uncertainty, a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice that underscored their every step. Lin found solace in their camaraderie as she revisited the files and evidence, determined to ensure Clara's story wasn't buried within the annals of a case, but rather honored as a life lost too soon. Gradually, Elmwood began to heal, but the shadows of Clara's story remained etched within its fabric. Community gatherings transformed into platforms for awareness, with discussions on mental health and support networks gaining traction. As whispers of renewed strength filled the streets, Lin recognized how Clara's legacy had transcended her tragedy, shaping Elmwood into a town more aware of the fragility of existence. With each passing season, she hoped for a brighter future that acknowledged the struggles too often neglected, while cherishing the lives that still thrived in the wake of law. As the clouds parted for gentle sunlight one afternoon, Lin breathed in the fresh air, ready to face whatever came next. The fight for justice never truly ended. It simply transformed into a quieter pursuit, a daily remembrance of Clara Bennett and the lives she touched in her short time on this earth. A reminder that even amidst despair, hope could flourish anew. Reflection. As the cool winds of autumn swept through Elmwood, Detective Sarah Lin found herself at a familiar cemetery, the weight of time pressing down as she stood before Clara's grave. The headstone, simple yet dignified, bore Clara's name alongside the dates of her life, a poignant reminder of the fragility of existence. The swirl of fallen leaves entwined around her feet, a gentle embrace from nature, whispering the stories of countless souls who had walked this era. In the silence, Lin reflected on the journey they had traversed in a relentless pursuit that had illuminated the shadows of despair, while honoring the spirit of a young woman. Clara's life was no longer just a tragic end, but a clarion call for awareness and connection within their small community. The darkness that had once cloaked Elmwood seemed to recede, replaced by a newfound commitment to dialogue about mental health, relationships, and community support. Lin felt hope emerge from sorrow, as her heart swelled with the understanding that this small town would carry forth Clara's legacy, promoting unity in preventing future tragedies. The bonds forged in pain had transformed into a resilient web of love and empathy, and the lessons learned remained indelibly stitched into the fabric of their lives.